Welcome to Manufacturing Northern Ireland's Meet the Makers podcast, where we speak to leaders shaping Northern Ireland's manufacturing and engineering sector. This is a series run throughout Northern Ireland's Manufacturing Month in May each year and is produced in partnership with eData, a network leading on digital, AI, and sustainability. Today, I'm very pleased to say we're joined by Mark Hutchinson, who is CEO of Hutchinson Engineering. Mark joined the family business in 1997 at the age of 18, following in the footsteps of his father, Crichton Hutchinson, who founded the company in 1971. When Mark joined the business, employed just 5 people, and today Hutchinson Engineering employs around 160 people in Kilrea. Under Mark's leadership, the company has grown into an innovative, full-service engineering design business offering in-house design, prototyping, and full-scale production. The company has marked its 50th anniversary in 2021, and Mark became a chartered director in 2022. Mark, you're very welcome along to Meet the Makers. Maybe just give you an opportunity, Mark, just to kind of explain to our viewers, what is Hutchinson Engineering? Who do you do work for, and what makes you proud of that business?
Thanks, Stephen. Well, first of all, delighted to have the opportunity to share my story and my experience with you here today. So as you mentioned, I'm Mark Hutchinson. I'm CEO of Hutchinson. We're a second generation manufacturing business based outside Kilrea. The business was set up by my dad, and I always idolised my dad, everything he did. And from a very young age, I always knew that I wanted to follow in his footsteps and come into the family business. I came in 1997. A number of key things at that point in time. My father had recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's, which was a huge life-changing event for him and us as a family. That meant for me as a young 18-year-old coming into the family business, my dad passed me across the keys and said, look, I want you to take the business forward from here. So there was plenty of opportunity within that. It was exciting on one hand and very, very daunting on the other. At that time, we provided equipment and services to the local agricultural community. And also around that time, that community encountered a lot of issues around foot and mouth, mad cow disease, and all those things, which really meant that they didn't have the same disposable income to spend with people like us. So I realised at that time, in order to scale and grow the business, that we had to diversify. And we diversified initially into plasma cutting, which helped us get into the industrial subcontract market, which then led on to laser cutting at a later date, which allowed us to start and do business with the likes of Wrightbus and other large OEM manufacturers, predominantly in Northern Ireland at that time. Really allowed us to diversify the business in a different way and then start on our journey of growth and development.
And Mark, you talked about the importance of your father inspiring you to be part of this business. Do you think you'd have found yourself into manufacturing regardless of that? Or was that real father figure in real terms the reason why you started into the sector itself?
Yeah, really for me, it was all based around my dad and always looking up to him. He was an extremely hard-working man. You know, he worked like 5.5 days a week, and then the other day and a half he was so tired then he just rested and whatnot. But I always looked up to him. You know, I was really intrigued by manufacturing, by making things, by repairing and fixing things, and that really inspired me from a very young age. From about the age of 4, I was in and around the business. I was there on Saturdays and at weekends and things. Yeah, it was really just that fact of being able to make a huge difference. I think for me, one of the key things that my dad taught me from a very early age was always treat people better than you would like to be treated yourself. And that for me was a really key lesson at a really young age.
And Mark, we talked there about when you joined the business, it was probably about 5 people in it. You're now sitting at 160 plus, and I noticed you're building some new facilities as well. Obviously, there was a big cultural change in the business when you joined as well. It wasn't just a case of just doing enough to get by. There was real ambition there to grow the business. Can you give us a little insight into what that experience has looked like?
Yeah, well, I think, going on the back of my dad's experience, he obviously had a very small team, but my dad was at the centre of everything and he needed to know everything that was going on. So really, you would class it now that at that time, he wasn't a good delegator. And that taught me a very good lesson as well, because, he would say that partially contributed, I suppose, to his diagnosis, where he took everything on himself. He did everything from answering the phone to quoting new business to actually going and doing the work, sometimes going out to fit it, etc. So again, that for me was another key lesson, that in order to grow and scale your business, you have to surround yourself with really, really good people. You have to share your vision of growth with those people. And ultimately, those people will help you to grow the business.
And obviously, that's a difficult thing for a family business. We talked about the business was born by your father, and I know yourself and your other siblings are involved in the business. But to bring other people in and to trust them enough that they actually share your passion for doing that business is tricky. I mean, you talked there about making sure that everybody in the organization understands what the vision for the business is. Is that enough, or is this a constant everyday piece of work that you need to do to build that trust and to ensure that actually your vision and your success can be achieved?
For me, it's all based on the culture and how you grow that culture in the business. It's obviously very, very different when you have 3 or 4 other employees. It's quite easy to control the culture, to change it, to make a difference. I think where the biggest challenge comes in is as you start to grow your team exponentially. Certainly when you get over 70 or 80 people, and certainly over north of 100, it's very, very difficult to keep that family feel for the business. I always prided myself in knowing everybody's name. I don't know everybody's name in the business. We've done a lot of things recently to help that. We now have a Hutchinson Connect app where everyone's details are on there. So if I don't know someone's name, at least I can look it up. For me, it's about establishing that culture. It's about establishing that base. And it's growing people with your culture while the business grows as well. So there's lots of challenges around that. But for me, if you go about it in the right way, you can do it, you can achieve it. And you just constantly have to keep evolving with that. I suppose, if anything, coming off the back of COVID a number of years ago now, the whole work force has changed. People's attitude to work has changed. Their work-life balance has changed, all of those things. And for me, the big thing is you've got to listen to your people. You've got to listen to them. You've got to take that feedback on board, and then you've got to change accordingly.
So you very helpfully introduced the fact that there are challenges, and don't just say this as the chief executive of manufacturing in Northern Ireland, but manufacturing is probably the most difficult business to be in when you consider the impact that global events have. Things are well outside your control, the complications of supply chains, managing people, growing that people base to try to ensure that the culture is maintained. But from you, those challenges and those obstacles seem to build a real resilience here that it hasn't deflected you from remaining ambitious and really going for it. But when you face those obstacles, how have you managed to maintain that positive growth-focused outcome?
I think for me, look, we're based in Northern Ireland. We're blessed with many things here, but what we're not blessed with is mass of people. So we don't have endless amounts of people to help us get things done. But for me, what we do have, and it's inherent here, is that can-do attitude and just get things done. We hit a roadblock, we meet a problem, we collectively can find a solution to that problem. So we are, and to me in Northern Ireland, we are solution providers. We always look at doing things. How can we do it better? How can we do it more effectively, etc.? So we're problem solvers in essence. But yes, certainly the distinct lack of people has been a huge challenge, and manufacturing very, very much so in this part of the world. For me, there's a number of different things that we have tried to support that. I suppose there's been a gap, you would say, for the last 20 years, Stephen. Really not a lot of people have been either encouraged or inspired to come into manufacturing or many other, I suppose, roles. Now, I do see green shoots. I do see that changing. We have set up an academy recently, and we've been completely overwhelmed by the response, of people wanting to come on board, which is fantastic. We can't walk away from the fact that there's a distinct lack of people with interest in this industry. I think inspiring young people to come into this industry is a key part of things moving forward. But there's also a big piece of trying to retain, motivate and incentivize those people, either who you currently have in your business and who are doing that job every day, or people who maybe want to move from a different industry. So that for me is a massive piece of work that everyone has to work really, really hard on. Bringing robotics and automation in for sure are a key part. That is a big challenge in an industry like ours, where we're based on low volume, high mix. So we don't have the advantage of having high volume. But there certainly are elements there where robotics, AI, and automation can help play its part. But all these things all have to work alongside our people. And that for me is the key part. And that's why these things work. It's having a good team around it. It's making sure that people are willing to accept that change, embrace it, and work with it.
And you've flagged there the kind of digital transformation that your business be under. We'll explore that a little bit in a second. But what I get a strong sense of, and I know because you're opening your factory doors to others to just come and have a look around and experience the journey that you guys have been on and continue to be on. So you're very open to collaborate. You're very open to allow others to come and see what you do. So how important is that collaboration in terms of the success of your business, that approach of going and exploring other places, other industries even for that matter, in terms of your own leadership journey? But how important do you believe that collaboration is, whether it's with the team in Hutchinson Engineering, with your customers, with the supply chain, or with other manufacturers?
For me, I think it's vital. I mean, a number of years ago, we went on a journey. In our business, I would say that we've got a high level of curiosity. We always want to know what's going on, how other people are doing things. A number of years ago, I took a few key employees and we visited 5 companies in England who were along the same lines as ourselves, but not competing in any way. And what I learned from those visits were that people are really, really willing to share their experience with you. And that absolutely blew me away because, in Northern Ireland, especially for a long time, with a mentality a bit like being at school, don't copy my homework. Don't let a competitor into our facility. Don't share that information with someone else. For me, the possibilities whenever you start to share information, we're all going through a similar set of problems, similar set of issues. Why should we all have to go and find our own separate solution to that problem? Together, if we can solve that collectively, if we can all work together in terms of, increasing the NI economy, we'll call it, in terms of that, well, why would we not work together? And that for us was really the basis of the inspiration of opening our doors in the form of Lean Tours. There's an absolutely fantastic Lean community right throughout Ireland. I think there's about 25 or 30 companies now who open their doors, share their experiences with other people, and that is very, very powerful. We're seeing the benefits of that. We're seeing more people being employed in the industry, and we're seeing people being able to grow and scale their businesses quicker because of that collaboration. So I think it's key moving forward that we all collaborate.
There was a really interesting experience at the beginning of COVID where just because of the extreme nature of what was being inflicted upon us as a business community and as a community at large, that people broke down those suspicions instantly and said, who has this type of material, who has this type of functionality or experience, who has something that I need that in order for me to be successful or continue to go. And equally, what have I got that I could share with others? And that kind of COVID experience did break down all those suspicions, and collaboration was a necessity, so people did it. We have run the risk of actually slipping into old bad behaviors, but you're clearly telling us all now that actually that continuation of that willingness to be open and collaborate is one of the reasons why your business is continuing to grow.
Yep. For me, even now, it's probably more prevalent. I mean, we all come under pressures from, low cost countries, and we have to be honest with ourselves. Northern Ireland is not a low cost country. But for me, it's about the solutions we can provide. As you rightly say, I mean, during COVID, the amount of people who pivoted, I think that was the big one at that time, and who were able to make face masks, who were able to make hand sanitizers, who were able to make sanitizing liquid and all that type of thing. And for me, that just showed the resilience and some of the how we can very, very quickly spin up and do things differently. And yes, as you rightly say, for sure, we have slipped back a little bit from that. And I think it's key that we do start and work together. We start and collectively find solutions to problems like the lack of skilled labour in this country. How do we all work together to figure that one out? So I think there's lots of opportunities for the manufacturing community, especially, to all work alongside each other.
I'm 12 and a half years in this job, and I've had the great privilege every week of walking through factory gates and seeing what people do. But I always remember my first visit to your business, and you talked about spending your father's money on new machines. But when I was recently through the business, that it's physically transformed. That space is physically unrecognizable from the first visit that I had with your business. And what struck me particularly in the last visit just a couple of weeks back was just the investment in that kind of digital transformation that the business is undergoing. And they talk about it's that data is the new oil. It's what keeps us all going. And manufacturers are brilliant at collecting data, but very unwise in terms of its use of it. But we know that you're doing some really interesting stuff in and around that data transformation, that digital transformation. Can you give us a little insight into just some of the things that you've been doing there?
Yeah, I think for us, we've certainly been on a journey. I think for us, data we've been gathering data probably for a lot longer than we've been using it. And I suppose it's wonderful if you can capture that data and then translate it into something that's meaningful. I think that's a key aspect. I suppose one of the first we made a huge investment in the business back in 2021. It was a 4 million investment in a large laser cutting cell with sheet material storage. And one of the key things for me, we were specifying the machine. It was just after COVID, so we weren't able to travel. Normally we would have gone to Germany and different places in Europe to see these pieces of equipment, but with many calls week after week with the German supplier of that equipment and going down through the specification list, and we asked them to justify why we would need something or indeed why we wouldn't need it. And there was one key item I remember. It was circa 100,000 euros, and we questioned quite heavily. You know, the supplier said, no, we don't feel you need that. And I said, well, look, tell us why we don't need it. So they asked us for our data from the previous 18 months, for example. And I remember coming on the call in the next week, or the week following that, and them just saying, oh yes, you actually do need that. And I was like, right, okay, so what changed? And they said, well, all the data that you've given us really pointed us towards the fact that would actually help you. And it transpired that 100,000 was going to save us hundreds of hours processing per year. So it was an absolute no-brainer. But what I'm trying to emphasize is if we hadn't had that data, we probably would not have made that investment, and therefore we would not have saved the time. So that was a key lesson for us. Moving on then in terms of our digital journey, we find ourselves now, we have Bluetooth tracking through our factory, which we did through the SDMH initiative, which was great. That allows us now to track components in our factory to within 1 metre of accuracy. So we have them on a trolley now. The trolley has a Bluetooth tracker on the top, and we're able to now to find those parts. That per year has again saved us hundreds of hours of looking for parts, etc. I suppose fast forward and AI is certainly the big buzzword at the moment. I think the bit that a lot of people are struggling with is to join the dots and find out, well, how can AI significantly improve my life in terms of business? How can it free up time? How can it do things better? We have one example recently where we're churning hundreds of drawings a day, potentially in terms of quotes. We found a piece of software that could read the data from those drawings and very quickly give us the information we need. So that meaningfully has again saved us hours and hours per week. So it's just trying to find, what problem are you having? What's taking all the time? And how can you reduce that time? And I think that is the big question that we all need to ask ourselves. And how do we improve our lives by freeing up that time so that we can be working on something more meaningful?
And I know this is something really important to you as a leader, and as instilled as a set of values as a family as well. But I mean, Kilrea is a very rural area. The government aren't going to turn up and deliver hundreds and thousands of jobs. There's no hospital, there's no motorway, there's no big data centers, or it's unlikely that we're going to get big FDI investment there. So it's really down to yourself, and you feel that responsibility as being part of a small community. So how important is it, whether it's a manufacturing business or others, how important is that community element to what drives you on as a leader and others as leaders?
Look, for us, it's at the centre of everything we do. As you said, we directly employ over 160 people. But if we look in the local community, we're supporting probably well over 300 jobs outside of that. And that's between the local shops, etc., the local suppliers that we have and whatnot. For us on a rural town of, about 3,500 people at the moment, that has a huge impact. For us, it's important. I think one thing that we found was really key was actually having that interaction with the local community. We recently brought on international employees from the Philippines, and those employees, many of them are living in the Kilrea area. And we found that it was key to go out to different groups and societies and speak to those people and say, look, there are people from pretty much the other side of the world. They're going to join our community. Here's why we're doing it. Here's a bit about them. And that for us was absolutely key in those people integrating well within this community. Because aside from that, people just don't understand. They don't know why these people are coming. The first thing is, are they coming to take our jobs? And you have to assure them that they're actually coming to support jobs here, so that more jobs will not leave here. So, being part of that community, and it's the other practical things as well. It's about supporting our local clubs. We're very close to the local Gaelic club, the local football club, the local golf clubs here. So, it's about that presence within the community. There's a Fairy Thorn Festival which takes place here every 2 years. We're a very proud headline sponsor of that, and that's about bringing the whole community together. Still, the majority of people that work to us are within a 25-mile radius of our factory. And for us, it's key that your name is out there. You're seen as being supportive in the local community. And anything the community needs from you as well, it's important that you can give that bit back as well. And we're always encouraging our employees to do as much as they can outside of work in terms of that giving back piece.
And I know that we briefly mentioned the fact that Hutchinson's now are running those lean tours. And I know that there's a community element, obviously, within the manufacturing community that are going to benefit from that. But obviously, there's a financial element as well. And unusually, you're doing something there that isn't as common, which is the fees that people are paying actually going to support community projects and charitable projects as well. Give us a bit of an insight into those tours and why you're doing it on that basis.
I suppose for us, in terms of the lean tours, yes, we are charging people. Why are we doing that? Well, we feel that if we're charging people for it, they come along, but we want them to feel that they're getting real value from that as well. So that's a big part of it. But what we've decided that the proceeds from all of those tours are going to be split amongst a number of community projects. So we'll do that each year. And for us, that's really, really important that we are then giving back to our local community. What does that do? That helps our staff who are part of those lean tours. It helps them feel part of something that they're helping to give back. And it also makes the impact of that overall a lot more meaningful.
And Mark, you mentioned that at the beginning of our chat that your father made it really clear, and the thing that really stuck with you was to treat other people better than you'd expect to be treated yourself. I mean, if you were offering some advice to an emerging leader, or young leader, or even somebody my age, what would that kind of would that really sound wisdom be for you? What's the equivalent of what your father told to you that you would tell those leaders?
I think for me, creating that good culture within your business, for me, is one of the most scalable competitive advantages that any company can have. So having the culture right is the foundation of your business. Nowadays people want purpose in their work. They want clarity. They want to belong to something. And us as leaders and all the leaders within our organization, what's part of what they need to do is to create that environment for people. For me, that has become even more prevalent in the last 4 or 5 years. People want to know how they're going to progress within your business. They want to know, what's this all about? Well, for us, it's not just about someone coming and standing on the shop floor and manufacturing parts for a large company like Wrightbus or any other. What impact is that having? What is the bigger piece of that? And we find that a lot. The other key aspect for me is that is now called empathetic listening. Listening to people. Can we solve everyone's problems? Absolutely not. But if people feel that they're being listened to, they feel that they're part of something, they feel that they're being cared for. So it's treating everybody as part of I suppose, like a wider family, for me, is really key aspect of our business. And once those people feel cared for, they feel listened to, they will go over and above and beyond. They will do things that you're not even expecting them to do. And it's great to see that coming through in the business.
We live in kind of really uncertain times, and the one thing that is sure to happen is that the path ahead will not be smooth. It'll not run the way that we expect it to. Being able to be resilient and adaptive and problem solving in that environment is really important. And I think you're every day demonstrating that is possible. But in the middle of all those challenges come opportunities as well. So for Hutchinson Engineering and indeed for yourself and your own leadership capabilities, what does the future look like for you? What's the next big thing that you're moving towards? And where should other manufacturing businesses be prepared to prepare themselves for what those opportunities look like?
As you rightly say, look, uncertainty has probably never been higher. Global issues. But for me, what can we do as a manufacturing business based in Northern Ireland? For me, the big challenge is certainly around the people. It's around how do we do more with the same or less people? How do we be more productive? How do we become more competitive? So for me, there's lots. I mean, certainly AI, automation, and digital tools will certainly help us along the way with that. But for me, it's about a number of key things. It's about having the best people. It's about coupling them with the best equipment. And then it's about giving people and being the best place to work. So there's a number of key things in there. I think the opportunities have never been better in terms of our reach. We have a huge export community here within Northern Ireland. We're exporting parts all over the globe. We have a fantastic opportunity. Goes back to my point earlier that we are problem solvers. Do we have all the people to do all of the work? Absolutely not. But certainly we can solve problems, and that has been shown time and time again in serving many different industries across the globe.
Mark, you're an inspiration to other manufacturers. It's the reason why you entered the Manufacturing Hall of Fame back in 24, and I think people watching today will understand why, because you're doing more than just leading your own business. You're trying to lead a wider manufacturing community as well, and thank you for that leadership. Thanks for sharing the story of Hutchinson Engineering from 1971, which just happens to be the year I was born as well. So I'm as old as your own business. Sadly, and I look a lot worse, whilst your business has looked a lot better in those 54 years. But your focus on people, on culture, on investment, on problem solving, I think is really important messages for others to really understand. We wish you and everybody at Hutchinson continued success. I'm sure we'll see and hear a lot more about the business in the coming years ahead. Thanks for joining our Meet the Makers podcast. This is a series of podcasts with manufacturing leaders that we'll be sharing throughout May 2026 and beyond. Thank you for being that champion on behalf of manufacturing. I think you're living every day the advice that your father gave you about treating people better than you expect to be treated yourself. And I think that is really core to the success of you and your business. And we're all very grateful for that. Mark, thanks for joining us. Thanks for your leadership, and we'll see you again.